Good morning, guys, and welcome to the multi-part workshop series on building, deploying, and managing microservices application with Docker, Kubernetes, and OpenShift. So this series is a part of our ongoing Build Smart on Kubernetes World Tour. So the Build Smart and OpenShift Kubernetes World Tour is a series of hands-on workshops that empower developers to innovate more and ship faster with one of the leading hybrid cloud enterprise container platforms, that is OpenShift. To gain knowledge on container-based development, you can join us at a Kubernetes training session that we organize regularly, like the one that is I'm going to be taking you guys through today, and you can get hands-on experience to build applications with speed, agility, and confidence. We regularly host new workshops with a range of content. Previously, we have run the OpenShift developer track, and the training was provided with an enterprise ready solution in mind for developing and deploying containerized software applications. You can look forward to another series on the Build Smart and Kubernetes World Tour, which would be based on the administrator side of things. So that will be taken on once we are done with the COVID-19 series. That is the agenda for today and for the next few sessions that we will be having. Also like to tell that in the next 1 or 2 months, mostly at the end of November, we are going to have a 2 day developer summit, which would be mostly based on OpenShift, container technology, and Kubernetes. So we will send out information very shortly on that. Before we dive headfirst into the series, I'd like to tell a little about myself. I am Devjani Chatterjee. I work as a developer advocate at the India Software Labs with IBM. I'm working with an awesome team of developer advocates who are passionately engaging developers like you in various clients and open source communities all around the world. My team and I, we engage with a lot of students throughout the year in hackathons, developer days, boot camps, through universities and communities. With because of COVID, now we are here live online, but otherwise we regularly hold meetups in various locations, and I'm sure once the offices are open back and the COVID thing is gone, we'll again get to meet face to face. So as I work in the developer ecosystem with IBM as a company being a pioneer with innovations and a vivid history which ranges, as you must know, more than 110 years. So we work with code, content, and community as the main mantra. So we speak at various tech conferences and interact with a range of developers who are working with IBM's platform, maybe on cloud, maybe on other services. This is where we seek to understand the pain points that developers go through that give out as a feedback for our project management teams to improve the products and user experience in general, so that when you are working on a product, it should be seamless for you. With that in mind, our agenda for this workshop series is literally the pillars of cloud native development. And the ultimate goal of the series is to teach you how to automate the entire application development process so that you, as a developer, can only focus on coding and eventually let OpenShift take care of all the heavy lifting and the tedious tasks. Or to put it in the developer's context, all you need to do is commit and push. So the series is around COVID-19 data retrieval, parsing, and analytics. So you must have seen a lot of data, processing that has been going on with COVID. There are a lot of website that shows you how the data is processed, what kind of um, things are running, how many daily affected numbers are, and how things are going. So keeping that in mind, this data I will be taking from Johns Hopkins University data. That is like one of the most authentic sources of data that you can get, and you can use that for your own development. So this is, as I told and as you must have known through meetups and other places, that this is a series of 7 hands-on workshops teaching you how to retrieve the data from the authentic source, making them securely available through REST APIs on Kubernetes and OpenShift. The primary application is developed in Java Spring Boot, but we will add more features and apply analytical services in the data in the form of microservices written in different programming languages, Python and Node.js to be specific. So further to simplify our learning journey and make it very use case oriented, these workshops are designed around an application of a popular topic. So it combines multiple containerized applications and microservices for parsing the COVID-19 time series data for the number of positive cases and mortality rates in different countries and regions. So you get to experiment with a variety of tools and technologies around a use case. To start with, part one of the series will focus on cloud native development, microservices, and the architecture of our COVID-19 data parser. Here is a quick overview of our journey into cloud native development. In the introductory part, we'll learn about cloud native application development, the benefits of microservices architecture, and the motivations behind their vast adoption. We'll take a quick tour of our COVID-19 application and how it has been designed as well. I'll let it be here for 10 seconds before I move on to telling what is there for part 2, part 3, and so on. So in part 2, you'll be learning how to use Docker as the de facto standard to containerize and test your applications. Part 3, you'll learn about container orchestration and how to deploy and scale your application on Kubernetes. In part 4, we'll experience how OpenShift simplifies and secures your orchestration tasks by automating the steps taken with Kubernetes. We'll finally use the CLI tool to deploy and scale our built containers, and later use OpenShift Web Console to deploy our application only using its source code, which would be like just a few clicks. It is a really powerful feature that we'll be also testing in part 4, that is the source to image or S2I. Part 5 will be exploring how code ready workspaces help teams build with speed, and you can do production from anywhere. Part 6, you will skip the managed OpenShift and introduce the code ready containers to build and test out your OpenShift deployment locally on your machines. And finally, part 7 will go a little more further. We'll automate it and set up the CI/CD or continuous integration and delivery to let OpenShift completely take care of the entire process from dev to production. So as I have mentioned earlier, every lab focuses on one particular step for building the cloud native microservice application. Well, you may ask what cloud native is and how that is related to microservices, and more importantly, why should developers educate themselves on those. Basically, see, the applications, when we are building, it must be built, developed, and operated in a way that it is not hardwired to any infrastructure. What used to happen previously is that you had your legacy machines and you had your IT infrastructure, which was mostly on premise, and you had to do your developments over there. There would be different so you have a let us say Windows machine, and you get an OS update. You had your particular dependencies configured for a particular maybe Windows 7 point something, and once the OS update comes, those dependencies are no longer needed, and now your application doesn't work the way it should. The services stop, and they are not particularly the people who are using are of course particularly not happy with the services, which mostly happens with systems that have been built older. Some years back, we used to hear that the servers are down, the website is not working, maybe an airlines company, maybe some government website, and many other places as well. So while we have spoken with engineers in top firms like financial services, manufacturing, and medical, public services, and various companies like that, most of them host their development and prod solutions in multiple clouds, private, public, or hybrid. What I mean by that is some part of their solutions are hosted on a place, the public cloud, where it is available to everyone. Some part is on private cloud, it's just for that particular company or the organization itself, and some part of it be hybrid, where both public and private people can have a look at that. So those firms have seamless migration from one cloud platform to another, being able to update their solution with latest tech and innovation. They need to scale on demand. So let us take for example, one of the major things that happen every year with us is the IT filing that we need to do. So come 31st March, IT filing needs to be done, and all of us are there on the website, and sometimes the website has like a 10 or 100 visitors on a day-to-day basis, but on that particular day, nobody files their taxes a week earlier, a month earlier, right? I mean, some of you must be doing, but mostly people are lazy. So what happens is, on that particular day, we have around I don't know, lakhs of people, thousands of people visiting the site. So what needs to be done is the same amount of compute needs to be provided to each user who comes and visits the website, who hits the service, the service sends a request, and things that get done. So only when a solution is scalable, that is to say, it has the capacity to accommodate not only the 10 people who come every day, but the lakhs of people who are coming on a particular busy day. So this always gets taken care with cloud native. So cloud native again provides all of these benefits if it is implemented in the right way and using the right tools. So for application developers, these are the key drivers that I am having on my screen, why cloud native is adopted. That is performance, flexibility and speed, and widespread adoption. What happens is, over half of our new applications which are to be developed in the next year will be on cloud. Among current adopters of cloud, 53% of applications are cloud native. So it is already, the shift is towards cloud native. It has already gone more than 50% over. It is just a few years when the entire thing moves to cloud native. So, but more importantly, if you look at things, people who are in the IT consider cloud native app development as the key driver for cultural transformation of their tech teams as well. Small teams own specific set of components on the overall application. Like you have probably a website where you are booking for a hotel. So one part of the hotel booking company will be hotel or flight services or things like that. They'll be taking care of the booking search. One part of the application will be probably getting done with your billing. One part of the application will be probably responsible for your searches and data retrieval of where you have booked and what kind of services you have used. One particular department will be taking the data from different ad services companies and using that to your benefit, where data science will be the play inside that. And there is where the teamwork and culture comes into play, and collaboration between application developers and operation experts need to take place continuously and centrally. They'll have to integrate source code updates across teams. A pipeline that develops in development, test, staging, and production environment needs to be happening. Now, how does cloud native development make those happen? this is one question that needs to be taken care of. So that happens by looking at things from the microservices perspective. So microservices architecture is in the building block and most essential integrant of cloud native development. Cloud native application consists of discrete reusable components known as microservices that are designed to integrate into any cloud environment. In its core, the microservices architecture advocates partitioning large monolithic applications into smaller independent services that communicate with each other by using HTTP and messages. If you take a look at the conversion of this monolithic business app into a number of microservices according to their business capability, you'll notice several points. These microservices, they are the ones acting as building blocks, and often they are packaged in containers. So when I was talking about the website that takes care of bookings and things like that, they have a tendency to separate their things into different blocks. So those blocks are the ones which are the searches, the bookings, and the ones they are the ones who are packaged as microservices into containers and are delivered to you. So in old days, when agility, time to market, and rapid application development weren't as vital as they are today, developers built a product and added features to it over time. As new features were added, applications grew bigger and bigger in size and complexity. Applications were built to run on VMs with massive operating system libraries and dependencies, and that is where different services and monolithic applications were tightly integrated, and failing one part of the application caused the entire part to fall. Restructuring is one of the things that needed to be taken care of often, like I said, with software updates and things like that. But that is not all. With monolithic applications, it disrupted teamworks because one team always needed to depend on the other team, and a game of who's the one at fault always took place. So developers blamed operation engineers, and things were not very good. When you look at it from the developer's perspective, they often spend their days building something new or debugging something that's broken, which is why they want a solution that simplifies the development process, making it faster and easier. The faster they can improve existing apps or find errors in the code, the more time they have to learn new skills. This is where microservices came into rescue. So the benefits of microservices: agility, shorter development time, flexibility, these are the things that help developers build something more robust and faster with fewer problems. And that is why we have designed this series for you to learn the essential knowledge to get started with containerized development and the orchestration platforms. So this is our course is going to teach you the steps involved in cloud native. I've already broken down the application into several microservices, but before we view the application, here is a quick summary of the architecture and components. So if you can see, we will be doing the whole thing on OpenShift, and in a step-by-step process, with OpenShift being the content orchestration tool here. We'll have different containers with the visualization, UI, the data parsers, and the analytics going on. We will have several microservices, one of them being Node.js, some of them being Java, and one being the Python app. And these will comparison with this will give out your whole application. So the application has been developed in Java and Spring Boot framework. It provides with a number of API endpoints for retrieving COVID-19 data per region, country, date and period. It comes with a number of containerized microservices, including 2 data parsers for COVID cases and mortality rates per country, and a user interface for displaying data as well as invoking those APIs to a number of sample functions. As you can see from this slide, the data is fetched from Johns Hopkins University's repo, which is an authentic source, like I said, and it is stored in our local data repository. So by the end of the series, you will have these four containerized microservices deployed and running on Kubernetes, OpenShift cluster, code-ready containers, and code-ready workspaces. The microservices are, like I said, two Java's apps and one Python and one on Node.js. Uh, the data parser is written in Java. The UI front end is written in Java to generate HTML and Node.js. The analytical application is written in Flask, and visualization application is written in Node.js again. So if you want to take a look at it, I will be pasting the links. Get on to GitHub and you'll be able to clone these applications. Give me a sec while I paste these information. I have put the COVID-19 web application on chat. The next I am posting the UI as well. So what we have to do in the first one or two parts of the series is that we have to make these two talk to each other, and only then we will be moving on to the rest of the things. So if you take a look at the structure of the web application and the COVID-19 UI application, what you'll be able to see is that the UI will be talking to the front end application, which is the UI will be used with the COVID-19 web application, and there is where you will be building and managing it. So as we move ahead with the rest of the series from the next few weeks, what we will do is I'll be updating this particular repository with the rest of the parts of the series, the things that you need to take care of. So right at this moment, only part 1 is there on the GitHub repository, and you will be able to see the agenda that I am taking through and the prerequisites that you will be needing next week once we build our dockerize our application, and the demo which I will be showing you today. So please note the repositories. So by the end of the series, you'll have the app running on OpenShift clusters and IBM Cloud with the image on Cloud Container Registry, IBM Cloud Container Registry. So now I'll just take you through a quick demo. This is the website, the Johns Hopkins website. If you can note the URL, that is https coronavirus.jhu.edu/map.html. So here you will find cases, active cases, incident rates, fatality ratio, and testing ratio, and all of that. And this is again hosted on the GitHub repository. I'll just quickly paste this repository as well. This is the map view that you will be able to see. Next, I am putting in chat the GitHub repository that Johns Hopkins University is using. Once we are done with the building and deploying the application, this is how the application is going to look on your browser. If you can see, this contains list of functions, displayed by country on specific dates, and displayed for, for a country for a period of time. I'm going to be querying all the data for India right now. If you see, the data has been taken from 22nd January. I just browse through faster from there, and if I'm coming to, the data is there up until 14th, 16th, I guess, is when I had last loaded this. So you can also display data for a country with specific dates, like how much is there from September, and so on and so forth. If you look at the overall architecture, the microservices, you'll be able to find, this is how the Spring Boot application is running. We'll be querying some things, and we will be getting the response out of those things, but mostly this is what exactly it looks like. These are four entities that we are having. The data service being the first two. You get the source, and you give out the parsing. The entity part of it, contains the uh, information, the data sources, latitude, longitude, and all of that. The repository is on JPA, and this is, we are getting from the COVID-19 Johns Hopkins University's GitHub page. You'll also be able to figure out and get the information by testing the APIs. I'll give it a minute, a few seconds, while you take this through. So if you look at the COVID-19 data repository, I'll just quickly try to change the view. Give me a second. Yep, those charts are available for later purview as well. I will take you once again through the visualization. Just give me a sec. So all of this data, is edited and updated every day. So you have these data starting from way before this year, once the COVID started, and the data is updated regularly, updated every day. As a matter of fact, you can view it live right now, as what the case is right now. You can view it country wise as well. You can filter out the data based on your requirement as well. So what we basically do in the first few steps is that we are going to be taking the data from the CSSE COVID-19 data, that is this one. And this is the data that we are going to be using. The visual dashboards are also available from the uh, you know uh, Johns Hopkins University, the previous page that I showed. This is this one, and this is how they have put it forward. So the data that we are looking at is particularly the CSSE COVID-19 data. So I hope now you can look at my screen once again. This is the data I am talking about, and if I am going here, this contains the time series data. If you can see, it is an automated update. You'll have the global CSB data. So if you see, starting from 22nd January, country wise, it is available up until to the date of today. I'm not going to be taking any more that side forward. If you look at the raw data, this is just CSV, right? They also have given the ways that you can be using the data in a different format. If you want to, field descriptions and everything is mentioned here. You can use their data to build something for yourself as well. Right, so I am refreshing this page right now, and will be taking the data that is available fresh as of now. If I am looking at a specific date uh, for a country on a specific date, let me look at India once again. And so with the refreshed data, I have information up until the 16th of September is what I can see here. So if you have taken a note of the applications that I have pasted the images, the first one is the COVID-19 application, that is the backend web application. You have your information here. So once we are done with the part 1 of it, that is today, and we get to part 2 on October 1st, I'm going to be putting down the information for part 2 here, and we'll be having a totally hands-on session on that day. Please make sure that you have your prerequisites set, you have these downloaded, and we'll be able to move on faster from there. So what we will do is we'll be quickly cloning these applications to our local, and we will be building them from the docker file. Once we have built them from the docker file, we'll be running them. So the first thing we'll do is run the web application. Once we have run the web application, we'll be moving on to the UI. Similarly, we will be building this out, and once we have built this, we will be able to connect these two together. What more you can do is you can test out the API endpoints that are present. So this is where we were before we had moved on to that particular place. So the next that we are going to be talking would be on October 1st, because October 2nd is a Friday, and though it is a Friday, we have a holiday, and we'll leave it out for that. These are the things that we are going to be talking at with the next live. That is, like I said, containerizing, building the Docker image, and SSHing into the Docker image, and things like that. Well, I'll leave the ground open for questions now. So to get the charts, Sunil, you'll have to look at the links that I have pasted. I'll be sending these over to Slack as well. I hope you're there on the Slack channel. I'm not sure. Give me 1 second before I can give you that. That would be IBM dot biz biz / dev - community. I'm also posting this on the chat. Right, so you don't have to register for the course as such. If you come and have, you're there with us for the rest of the series, till the end of the series, you should not be having difficulty. So that's all you'll have to do. You don't have to register specifically. However, there is a sheet that I will be sending it out on there's a Google form that you can fill up. So if you are looking at this page I am right now, before we take more questions, I will ask you guys to take a look at these meetup groups. These are the meetup groups where we post these information regularly for meetups, and This is one of those meetups that I have taken, I have posted over on the meetup groups, and you'll be able to register for the events coming up next over here. I'll I manage the Bangalore meetup, and I'll just paste this link also on the chat. This bit.ly/IBMBLR. So the charts that you are asking about, Sunil, these are also there on the repository that I just pasted above. So you'll be able to take it from there if you fork both of these repositories on your own, and on your own GitHub profile, and then you clone them. You'll be having those there. So if you are present with us next on Thursday, I'm sorry, October 1st, I'll show you how you can, do the build, and how you will be able to have the same application running on your local. Yes, Indranil, you'll be able to add other microservices as well. Yes, you can do that. So, at the end of the 7 series, that is the seventh one, how about, we do viewers' choice microservices feature development. So you can also contribute back to this. The link is no longer active. Okay, I'll be sending another link out, Jyoti. So that you can take a look there. Give me a second. So you can use this link to join in as well. So load balancing is one of the things that can totally be added here, and if you would like to work on it along with some of us from IBM, why don't you send me
So you can use this link to join.
text on Slack, or probably on LinkedIn as well, or in the same repository you can just send out a comment there, and I can see how we can rope in together and do something. So I'll be telling you what other algorithm is working at the back end of the application once we get on to discussing the data analytics part of it. What other questions can I answer, guys? Let me know. Also, this is one of the things that I get asked very often, that is, if you can get access to Kubernetes or an OpenShift cluster on IBM Cloud, so that you can give it a try for yourself. And I would give a workaround for that. So that is mostly workshop based. When we have our workshops, specifically we keep the containers up for the weekend, and 3-4 days the community folks give it a try. And however, if you go to cognitiveclass.ai, I'm just pasting it over here. So here there are a range of courses that are there. You don't have to take through all the courses. However, these courses you'll be able to get badges here, or certificates also, and you can display them on your LinkedIn or elsewhere. You can try you can search for any Kubernetes or containerization course, or even OpenShift courses. And once you sort through some of the courses, you'll be able to see that there are labs that you can take there. So those labs are already provisioned for you on IBM Cloud, and you'll be able to practice your OpenShift stuff there. You'll have a cloud CLI. There is one more resource that I'd like to share with you. That would be OpenShift Playground. Yeah, exactly, Sunil. This is the particular course that I was talking about. So you can give it a try for the clusters. So OpenShift Playground is one more place that you can give it a try. You guys are already very good with the links. Thank you so much for sending it out as well, Bala and Sunil. So I guess today this is what it will be with the session. And if you don't have any more questions, we'll close up. We'll meet again on October 1st. You can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter also. Shoot any questions that you have on OpenShift, on containers, on Kubernetes, on cloud native development, on anything on cloud, and I'll take a look. You can send out a tweet and I'll answer your questions there. Thank you so much, guys. It was a pleasure discussing things with you here. Goodbye and have a very happy weekend.